Um, I mean, this class has to have a total number of students for me to get full pay. And the funny thing is, I think it's more than is allowed in the class. The class is capped at 10, and I think full registration is like more than that.
Gosh.
Wow.
If you ever want to wonder about anything about how things work at USA, just watch the Jag Tram ride around.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going somewhere, we just don't know where. I'm not accustomed to turning down jobs or money at all. Early in life as a musician, busy or broke. You're either busy working all the time or you have no money. And I do this job, and I do independent recording engineering work that's been real profitable. It's the weirdest job ever. There's several kinds of horse riding. One is called dressage. It's like horse dance. And what I do is my boss does the choreography, and she chooses the music according to how the horse moves. And then I take that music and change the tempo digitally to match the footfalls of the horse, because the horse doesn't care what music you're playing. And then split up the music so that the new phrasing makes sense with the choreography, and make it all seem seamless and just like the way it was written originally. And I make pretty much money doing that. And we have clients all over the world. I've worked people in South Africa, New Zealand, all over the former Soviet Union, all over Europe, all over the United States. Had 7 horses. No, that's not quite right. We won the Paralympics, our music did. Well, the horse did. Paralympics for dressage is, never mind. But I never thought I would be doing that, but I like it better than regular recording engineering, which is usually pop music or something, and I just get really tired of it quickly. Whereas this, I can get in and out in 3 or 4 hours, make $100 an hour, and move on to the next project. And I used to teach a lot of piano, but I actually like doing horse music better than teaching piano. As long as I don't. The worst is when I get some tune that I knew from a child, like something from when I was a child, like we mix parts of the Sound of Music or something, and that's just like, I can't even say the word without tunes jumping into my head. Now, that's called, I'm sure you've heard the research in the past couple of years, they're called earworms when you get a tune stuck in your head, and I definitively can get out of the earworms. And would you like to know how I do it? I'll tell you. I start multiplying 10 times, 9 times, 8 times, 7 times, 6 times, and just doing mathematical puzzles will get the earworms out of your head. Because the reason the tune is stuck in your head is our mind wants to solve problems. And when you get into like certain kinds of music, there's expectations of the next thing, and the mind just never gets to the end of the piece. It doesn't sing it to the end of the piece and stop. That way we would just have a 3-minute earworm. It wouldn't just, that one little bit of music wouldn't just be stuck in our head. So mathematical problems are the way to get out of that. Now when you're having troubles with your significant others and you've got tape loops running on your head on that, I can give you this advice. If I were to ask Lynn to do something, or Hannah to do something, I would say, would you please do something? And you would say, of course. But when we talk to ourselves, we say, stop thinking about that. Which, me being a rather rebellious sort of individual, I just rebel against my own self. But if I say, please, David, don't think about that. And if that gets you a minute of peace, then you train yourself, and then you're not thinking about things that you have no control over any longer. I would think, as a public school teacher, having so many students, those little interactions with students can get dreadful. You know, you don't want to get into like, oh, if I'd have said this, he'd have said that, and I'd have said this, and then we'd be happy forever. But that's just never the case. So, I had an experience of moving here, taking over a theory program that I don't know what had been going on, but nobody knew anything was a problem. And I started teaching my course from Alabama, and I was always having students in my office like crying and just being really upset. And you know what I decided? Make the class easier. And now I'll do most anything to keep a student from crying in my office. I'll even to the point of saying, you know, if you start crying, we'll both get really embarrassed, so let's just take a break here and not do that. The other hard thing to do is to treat everyone equally, even when in reality you don't feel equal about them. And if in some ways I go more out of my way to be fair to students that I don't like, because I don't want that to be a part of myself. Also, try not to let a student run your whole class. You'll find this, it won't happen every year, but you'll have someone in your class that is so something that her, I'm saying her because it's often a her, her emotions are such that the whole class has to be involved. It's just, it's like, cut it out, be an adult. Now, I will share some rules with you that I don't have on my syllabus that I have found are very, very useful. Number one rule is no yawning in class. Now, why do I say that? One thing, you always want the teacher to be happy, and it is so fun to watch the students try to stifle their yawns. It's very entertaining. Now, why do I care about the individual student? Yes and no. I care about the whole class, and I like everyone to know that the class is more important than any individual and is more important than the instructor. So we don't yawn because we are herd animals and everyone will start yawning. This is a known fact, right? 2, don't allow people to sleep in class. Not because it wouldn't be good for them, not because, that might be what they really need to do is take a nap. It's possible. good chance you're not going to miss anything important. But what it says to the rest of the class is, this person is sleeping because they don't find this material important. Well, maybe it isn't important. You want your students to think what they're doing is important. Okay, I'll get to that more. Don't let students study other things in class, because again, it sends a message to the other students that, oh, they don't find this important. Now kids, you really have to make that point with them, because they're very narcissistic and they don't want to think that everybody's thinking about them, and everybody is thinking that what they do is what's important. People haven't always been like that, but we've raised our children to be completely narcissistic by telling them that they're fairy princesses and they're great and they're good at everything, and even though you came in 7th place, you're really good and you should feel good about yourself. All of these are positive things, but in reality, people do better and worse at things, you know, and we don't want the fact that I'm the most important person in the world affect the rest of the class, you know. I also believe that actually people Hannah's age are quite the smartest people. They know the most. They're the most technologically proficient. They've had an entire life of dealing with technology, and they're very smart, but they're smart in a different way than people of the 20th century. And I'm really looking forward to the year 2017, 2018, when I teach my first new millennials. You know, you may have some already, right? Kids born in the 21st century. That's just a phenomenal concept. I was born in 1957, and that seems forever a long time ago. You know? The other rules is drinking of non-alcoholic beverages is acceptable in class. Eating is not acceptable. Here's why. It makes other people hungry. So, do you see where I'm going with? And you can have your own set of rules. The rules aren't as important as making the message that the class is the most important thing, and that we are learning together and separately, and we are not going to do anything to distract anyone else from their mission. The other thing I do as a teacher, and you've probably noticed this, I look at every single student every minute of every class, every day, regardless. And now, new millennial kind of problems that hard to just to know what to deal with, cell phones. I've pretty much given up.
Just how are you supposed to deal with that?
Huh?
How are people supposed to deal with that?
So teachers, you mean?
It's miserable.
Like,
We take them away. I just take them away.
I think in high school you can be a little bit more jackbooty about things, but I'll put it in my syllabus, and still you have to understand that the students, many of them, get really uncomfortable if they can't look at their cell phone pretty often.
It's kind of the whole, I mean, adults are just as bad.
Oh, I'm just as bad.
I love my cell phone.
I
I love my iPhone.
And so much, like, I'm a well-read person. I read a lot, and recently I've moved about all of my reading onto my cell phone Kindle, because it's always there. I can make the print real big, even though it makes the book 6,000 pages long. But I don't care. I'm just like kind of like that. That's about how fast I read, because the print's real big, and, I can get all kind of obscure books that you can't find in the libraries anymore. They're not exactly great. Anyway, enough on that. But I love my cell phone too. What I've done is take a lot of things off of the cell phone desktop, like my Twitter app and stuff like that. I have to go through several steps to get to Twitter. And I got into Twitter a while ago because a lot of new music composers and stuff use Twitter to promote themselves. And I don't do Facebook. There's too many skeletons in the closet, but I'm kind of aging out of that. All the harm I did as a younger man is sort of, no one cares anymore. I don't want to keep up with something every day. I don't want to keep up with all my nieces and nephews, which I have like hundreds of. I don't want to spend time doing that, but I don't mind that other people do. I don't mind that my wife keeps up with their nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters and friends and the whole yoga community and all of that. I don't mind that. I enjoyed doing Twitter for a while, and then I quit because I found I was just really interested in, I don't know, sort of cyber stalking, basically, you know. And then I went back to it, and then I realized why I stopped again. It does take a lot of time. Whereas your email and your text messages, if you're a normal person, you can get to the end. But Twitter, never the end. There's never the end. There's never the end.
I couldn't have that constantly going. I couldn't have that constant Twitter feed coming up. That would.
Yeah, I just find it pretty banal or banal, whichever you prefer. But I understand why people do it, and it can be rather clever, but I think I'd rather read a book on my Kindle instead of reading posts on Twitter. And now my son text messaged me something the other day. We were having car problems, and he texted me, "I am so tired of this car not starting." I'm like, oh, that's a tweet. That's the kind of what people tweet when they're not tweeting what they're having to eat. Anyway.
Hashtag
Yeah.
Ford Miller.
Yeah.
I have some hashtags, things my theory teacher says. People got into that for a while, but
What exactly is hashtag supposed to mean?
it's just that you put that hashtag in your tweet, and everybody who does that hashtag, it collects them all together. And so, hashtag I'm having a bad Wednesday. Everybody who's having a bad day can put that also in there. It gets very confusing and pretty useless, all in all. So what's the point? I've had students, I'll say, don't text in class. I had a girl, music theater major, and she would be texting with her phone right there. And I would teach with my hip right by her cell phone, and she still wouldn't quit. It's like, what do I have to say to an actual college student? I mean, you're supposed to be an adult.
Wow.
So I just gave up at that point. And some people, they just, the thing is, and I'm sure you've all noticed this, if you're talking to someone and then you start reading a text, you don't hear what they're saying.
No.
And that's why when you're driving down the street and you're looking for an address, you turn your radio off. There's no reason why that radio is keeping you from finding that house other than
It's distraction.
we don't really multitask, we serial task really quickly. So if we're texting and driving and putting on our lipstick and having our coffee and listening to the radio, we're not multitasking, we're doing one thing at a time quickly to the detriment of the rest of the Alabamians. I wear a really light shade. Okay, so I think it's good to have rules that bring the class together and not divide the class. I have different opinions on attendance policies. I'll put them in my syllabus, but I often won't keep track. I found that mainly people who don't come just fail themselves. But occasionally, you'll have a really bright student who'll just turn all his work in at the end of the semester, and it's like, it's hard to fail him. I mean, it's better than the rest of the students, and he didn't show up the whole time. He obviously doesn't need this. So I try not to make too many rigorous rules just so I don't have to break them. The other thing, and you high school folks may find this amazing, but you may have experienced this with me as a student. If you tell me something, I will just believe it. It doesn't matter to me whether you're lying or not. If you tell it to me, I will believe you. And that's the way it is. I have found, in my experience, also about cheating. If it's really thrown in my face, I will say the most negative possible thing to the student and then just make them do the work over. One thing you don't want to do is to bring them before some kind of academic council, because then you're going to waste a lot of your time and everybody's going to get upset. And it's never good. It never works out. So the cheating that I have is the most obvious and apparent. In MacGammon, you have to get the file from MacGammon with your name embedded in it. That file, you can change the name of the file to David Durant's doing Bobby's work, but internally it's still going to say Bobby or whatever, you know. That never changes. So sometimes you'll run the spreadsheet of all the students and it'll have two people with the same, you won't have any duplicates in the titles of the files, but you'll have duplicates in the spreadsheet. And then they'll also have the same. I like it best when one person will do 4 of them and the other person will do 3 of them, you know, when they share. And they always will say something like, you know, it was an accident, we were working together, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what I say is if you have intentionally done this, you have the potential to be expelled. And I will take this to the highest extent of what I can, or you can do all the other work over again from scratch. So then they may have done half of the work, but
Now they're having to redo everything.
They have to redo it all. I've also had people pay other people to do the MacGammon, and that's the saddest part of all. The saddest story I had was a girl was bragging about being paid outside one of our tenor voice professor's office, and if you know that professor, you know that he doesn't, I mean, he's not gonna allow you to say stuff like that right outside the door. And then the girl, and I came and just explained the situation, what she had done, and in fact, I believe she was being honest, and I just started laughing at her. I couldn't help it. It's like, so you're gonna have to do all the work over, and you've had to pay this girl. That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. So in a college classroom, you could have, my biggest class I've ever had was 52 freshman theorists and a dog. Seeing eye dog. It was so funny. We taught 4 days a week at that time, and the Tuesday, Thursday class was 75 minutes, and the Monday, Wednesday class was 50 minutes. I would teach Monday, Wednesday, and I had another assistant before Mr. Davis. She taught 1 year for me, and she had the Tuesday, Thursday class, but turned out she couldn't really handle the class, so I ended up teaching her. Yeah, she would
She was a
watch.
beast at the piano.
Great pianist and a lovely person, but she wasn't suited to teach ear training or anything else. But the problem was, when I would come in and teach on Tuesday, Thursday, the dog would stand up after 50 minutes because, oh, that dude's here, that means we go 50 minutes. And also sometimes the dog would be sitting there and just all of a sudden it'd be like, the dog is snoring away. But since he was a helper dog, you couldn't really, if he had his thing on, his thing, you couldn't treat him like a pet. But if the gentleman, the blind student, would take it off, the harness off, you could play with him like a dog. So all, the kids loved the dog, and Thomas was there. I've taught 2 blind students, and I can tell you it's difficult. It's really difficult. Megan Squire and I did a research project we got funded for, was to teach sophomore theory to a blind student. We have a blind student here named Wayman Patrick. Really just a lovely young man. He plays the piano brilliantly. And he knows Braille, but when you do research on teaching music theory to a blind student, it's all about, we have him play it on the piano. It's like, well, that's not really the same thing as solving part writing problems. And so we developed this whole system to where he could translate it into Braille and then be able to put it into dancing dots and then music XML, and then translate the music XML back to Finale. And then we're looking at part writing that a blind student has written. And we're the only people who have ever done that. And it was really a lot of trouble. It was a lot. And
Sounds like a doctoral project.
well, it was, Megan is as bright as they come. She just graduated, or is currently graduating. She finished her piano performance degree, but she's also getting the music business degree, so she's interning with the Mobile Symphony now. I would fail her if I could keep teaching her and having her be my assistant. As my assistant, she did the recording, or much of it. She graded all the freshman papers, which was a lot the first semester, it was a lot less the second semester. And she kept track of all of the MacGammon, which we do and all of the MFund software, so all of this is emailed to her. She has to get it in the spreadsheet and do all the math for it, keep track of all of that. Plus, she did all the stuff for Way Min. Tyler did recording and graded the sophomore theory papers. I have just had to identify the person who did theory the very best and hire them. There's usually one or two people that can do part writing about as well as I can, and then they get hired. Then everybody else just does pretty good. Okay, back to the business of key signatures. We want them to abstractly learn to write the key signatures on paper and write them correctly every single time, and even incorporate some other clefs too, do the key signatures on the other clefs. Now the next thing is, this is hard too, how to explain the circle of fifths. Now for many of college students, they're going to initially think, oh, that's a drinking game.
Could be a good one. How do you feel about people describing it as the circle of fourths?
No one does that I know
I have so many colleagues who, when I say circle of fifths, they say circle of fourths, and I'm like, but everything's in fifths. So
In my,
there's
my
nothing that's in fourths
experience,
unless you go the other way.
many musicians don't understand theory. They just don't. When I gave my lecture here to get the job, which was my future colleagues had never heard what I was talking about, and I thought it was pretty straightforward. So, anyway, I've never heard anybody say circle of fourths, and
It drives me insane.
well, we want to keep a good attitude.
How many screenshots have you taken on the cue?
Yeah, I can turn that off. Now, what I like to tell people is, it's simple. Many of us are going to deal with band first, so they're more familiar with flats. Circle of fifths goes backwards on the flats, or it goes down. So if you start with C, a fifth below C is F, and then B flat, and then E flat, and then A flat, and then D flat, and then G flat, and then, is that all of them?
It's all flats.
Okay, good enough. Okay. All right, so with the sharps, we've got to rearrange this, you know. We're going up a fifth, G, D, A, to E, to B, to F sharp, to C sharp.
Got some cramping to do on the left side there.
D flat, G flat, C flat. Close enough.
Yeah.
This is not good, of course. And you can see where it intersects intersects. Now, it's just as easy as this. We start with C, right? And we just have to remember Verbindliche. It's as simple as that. Verbindliche. Now, how do you do the sharps? Verbindliche backwards. So C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, and C sharp. F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat. Does that make sense? I like to spell words. I don't like to use acronyms. I like to spell. Acronym is spelling words. I like to use acronyms. Verbindliche. So.
I had a theory student when we were putting the sharps in order. He made it. He said F skikadabe.
So now comes important stuff. If we're in the key of C, we have two things that we call tendency tones. Okay? The tendency tone is 4, scale degree 4, and scale degree 7. Scale degree 4 tends to scale degree 3. Scale degree 7 tends to scale degree 8 or 1. Okay? When you put those together, you have formed another TT, which is the tritone, right? So we have TT standing for two different things here. Tritone. So the tritone, when it takes the 4th and the 7th scale degree, it's gonna resolve outward to its tendency. Okay? Does that make sense? If it's inverted, it's going to move inward to the same tendency tones. So that gives us some information about a particular interval, which is the tritone, which is the diminished fifth and the augmented fourth. So the augmented fourth naturally moves outward by step. The diminished fifth naturally moves inward by step. Now, that's what makes our keys, okay? So when you are adding or taking away, when you're adding a sharp, you're taking this new tendency tone, scale degree 7, one sharp is F sharp, and it is tendency tone with its previous point in the chart. Did that make sense? F sharp is what you add to get the G key. Now, how about here? We're going to add C sharp, right? Its tendency tone is C sharp and G. Do you see how this is going? All right. This is the mathematical nature of music. Some students enjoy the mathematics of music more than music. So, now, if we add a third sharp, there's its tendency tone, right? The previous. Okay, so also these notes that you are adding, what are their relationship to each other?
They're a fifth part.
They are a fifth apart. Okay, so it's all a circle of fifths. Now, going backwards, I guess a circle of fourths is really a band thing. C to F to B flat to E. That is just really confusing. Because we would never think, we would have to go C sharp to F sharp to B to E to
Oh, no,
A.
it drives me insane.
That drives me,
Every time he talks about it, it drives me insane.
okay,
It's not
so let's think about this. What happens when we go around the other direction of the circle of fifths? Is there anything that happens that, okay, well, I don't know. Right, if we add one flat, it's B flat, and it precedes the next key, doesn't it? Okay, so in a way, our circle of fifths is still moving this way in terms of key signatures. Now, what does that tell us about our tendency tone? Okay, when we moved to G and we made our tendency tone, now when we move this way, B flat, is it a tendency tone? It is a tendency tone. All right. But does it have that same relationship that this had? No, it couldn't possibly have that same relationship. Okay, so that's not as instructive that way. Now, it again is a circle of fifths around this way. As we add another, it precedes the next one. Does that make sense? All right. We talk about tendency tones very early in music theory, and it doesn't, we say 4 and 7 are tendency tones, but we never explain why they're tendency tones. Do we understand now? Do we understand why they tend to where they're tending? They are,
I don't think that we ever even talked about tendency tones in music theory.
huh.
That would be good.
Okay, so we have tendency tones, they form tritones, and the tritones is what you pay your tuition for. It really is all about tonal music, is that tritone within the scale, within the key. So now we've learned circle of fifths by understanding perfect fifths. Now what I like to do with the students is, I'll start with Stephen. Name any perfect fifth. Up.
How about D to A?
D to A.
G to D.
E to B.
B to F sharp.
Be like this.
Okay. So, within that, we want to teach the students that what are the white note perfect fifths? C and G, D and A, E and B, F and C, G and D, A and E, but not B and F.
Right.
So the only white to black is B to F sharp. Okay? So when we go the other direction, C sharp to G sharp, or do the black notes. What are the black note fifths? Well, C sharp to G sharp, or D flat to A flat, E flat to B flat, F sharp to C sharp, G sharp to D sharp, but A sharp or B flat to F natural is black to white. So we have one white to black, and we want to have one black to white. Is this true?
Yes.
Okay, so then we want to identify that on each of our staves. Each of our staves identify the perfect fifths. So when you identify the perfect fourths, you're also gonna have one black to white and one white to black. What is the white to black perfect fourth ascending?
Have to be.
Black.
Have to be flat.
Those of you who have studied with me have heard me say that so many times, right, Lane? Somebody will say F to B, and I'll say flat. Just like flat. Right, so it is the inversion of the only black to white perfect fit. So what is the only white, no, I just said that one, black to white ascending fourth, perfect fourth?
F sharp to D.
F sharp to B. Exactly. Okay, so now we've learned, like, oh, this is one way that we could immediately identify intervals is because we've memorized them. Okay? So and you'll notice one way, let's see.